The Pilgrim King by Zachary Tringali. Adapted for audio drama by Stephen Gordon. For full information, check out swgordon.com/Pilgrim King. Enjoy.
Bones sprouted from the snowdrifts as teeth might have, shining in the pale moonlight. At the heart of the cave was a door so black the shadows nearly swallowed it. Aodh looked back the way he came. The wind had swept in and filled the gaps his feet had left. Would he ever be able to find his way back? He had before, but then his eyes had been younger. His hands had not trembled all those years ago. How many days had it been since he had last eaten? Since he had seen grass or felt a warm breeze on his cheeks? And when had he been forced to kill his own horse, so he might cut her open and climb inside for the warmth that hid between blood and bone? Time had lost meaning. The road had been too long and sanity had passed into craze, the way young age turns to old. No, he would not blame his hands for shaking. It made little difference. He fit the iron key into the lock, but Hag's Gate demanded more. He stripped off his leather boots, his thick woolen trousers and doublet. He hid them behind a rock at the back of the cave, covered in his sable cloak. He ran his fingers along its frayed edges and sucked in a deep, cold breath. Naked, he entered the Hag's Gate. The sky was the color of a tallow candle, melted and pooling. The ground was more ice than snow, and where he stepped he left skin behind. The walls of the cliffs rose up in great peaks, black and pitted all around him. When the wind blew, cold rain stuck to his beard and eyebrows, and turned to ice. When he shut his eyes, even to blink, he could feel eyes crawling over his skin. When he looked, he saw only the fleeting shadow of dark wings against the pale sky. Nothing had changed. His skin was as thin as paper. His hair had lost its luster. But the under was the same. Nor was it any better for seeing it a second time. The fetid smell that lingered did not sour his stomach any less. The winter had not abated, and he sensed that nothing had died, or ever truly lived, not since she had left. He walked for hours, passing gnarled trees and small, bent creatures, chattering to themselves. His knees were knocking together from the cold and the pain by the time he found the boy. Aodh knew he needed him. Someone who could go before and smell the dangers. Another voice. Another body to stand between himself and the madness. The boy's back was curved and his skin was so thin that the knobs of his spine bobbed up and down with the bobbing of his head. He sat on his haunches before the great, twisted body of a worm, more alive than dead. Aodh dare not think of how the boy had taken the thing down, nor how long he had spent peeling back its thick scales to rip into its carcass.
Boy.
The boy turned and looked at him with eyes like the dying embers of a fire. His hair was like hoarfrost, and his mouth was red and sticky with blood. He held the worm's heart in his hands and, without looking away, bit into it again. The muscle popped and fresh blood dribbled down between his fingers, streaming with warmth. Aodh saw no recognition in those black eyes. Could a creature such as him even remember? But no, he must. It would be a blessing to forget this place, and none in the under were so blessed.
Boy, you will take me to the Harrier King.
The boy chewed for a long moment. He spat, red viscera on white snow.
Few come here looking for him. None! Why did you come?
I was invited.
He held out his palm. The iron key was the only thing left to him but for his beard. He dropped it into the snow and watched it steam and hiss. He had found it, driven into his door with a bent nail. And he had known. If he wept when he found it, no man could think less of him for it.
You are supposed to enter the Hag's Gate naked.
So I am.
He held his arms out, biting the inside of his cheek to stop the shivers from running up his back.
Unless you mean to take my skin from me. It is my finest leather, though, and not even you can make me part with it.
No.
He ran his tongue along his lips. His eyes floated upwards.
You still wear something. I cannot see it, but it's there.
He held the heart out between them, his hands cupped over it.
An orange is naked, save for the rind.
He unfolded his hands, looking as though he expected an orange to be there.
I am as naked as the day I was born.
You said you were invited? Tell me why the king would invite you.
He took my daughter.
The words turned to ash in his mouth. And now he hopes to take me too, he might have said. But he dared not give voice to fear. He breathed onto his hands, but it did little to warm them. And he suspected the chill was not entirely from the cold.
Why?
The boy smiled, his teeth orange and pointed.
Why would he do that?
I will tell you, but only if you can guess it.
He took the heart, half eaten, and tossed it into a drift.
And only if you take me to him. Now.
Yes, yes.
The boy's words became a white mist between them and floated away. He sucked on his lower lip, licking the last sweetness of blood from it.
Yes, I will take you.
The rocks cut into A's feet. As far as they walked, there were no soft places to rest, and there was no time for fire to warm their bones. He dare not cry out and bring them to him. Those midnight things with eyes like nightmares, watching, always watching. No, the boy was looking at him strangely already. The path sloped downwards. The rocks would recede soon.
How did you know to come through the Hag's Gate naked?
The door would not open unless I was.
A bird flew overhead. He watched its black wings unfold, revealing the withered, twisted face of the harpy, crane down to look upon them.
How is it that you found the gate at all?
A father knows where his daughter is.
He watched the boy leap a small fissure, passing from rock to sloping land.
I walked until I found it. This is not real guessing, just mindless questions.
The boy sneered. A leapt across the last of the rocks. His knees and back ached, and when he stretched, the bones cracked like rolling thunder. The hills ahead were low and dead. The grass was gray and dry. They passed brambles of black holland, the white willow that cast no shadow, and more weeds than he could count. They came upon the lake. Dead trees sprouted from the surface where the moss grew high, their black boughs dipping as if to drink from the water. The boy sat and rocked upon his heels, watching the water that stretched on into the vast indifference of fog and marsh. The wind blew, but the water did not stir. A snake uncoiled from the branch of a tree and slipped, plunking into the water. A picked up a rock and, stepping forward, beyond the widened gaze of the boy, cast it into the lake. It skipped along the surface and was swallowed by the mist on the far side. After 5 jumps, he heard the plunk of its descent. He listened and heard nothing.
Come.
He waded out until the water came to his neck. He swam out into the mist, keeping his hands above the water and swimming with his legs. Not once did he feel anything touch his toes or wriggle against his ankle. He never stopped waiting for it, though. Aodh pulled himself ashore and sat, picking the lake weeds from his legs and arms. He watched the boy, whose dark eyes flitted about like birds. How low had the king stripped the boy? Aodh remembered him once plump, dressed in black leather and a ring of stone on every finger. The boy made it to the other side and scrambled up onto the shore. Aodh's mind seized upon a thought. The boy who casted vision stones for the king, who had seen his first coming to the Under all that time ago. Had he looked again and seen his daughter? Told the king? His fingers ached to squeeze the boy's neck. Anger boiled in his belly. He stared and waited for it to pass. It was too dangerous to go alone. He could not risk not making it. The boy leapt for him, tooth and nail scratching hot trails down his skin.
What if the Kelpies had not been asleep? What if your stone had woken them?
Aodh shoved the boy backwards into the snow, thin white arms flailing about in the drifts.
Then I would have let you go first.
The boy's teeth chattered together as he looked out across the lake, struggling against the arms that pinned him. The boy spat. Spittle clung to his lips and froze.
I am not taking you anywhere else. I'm not going any further. No mystery is good enough for this.
Aodh unwound the long weeds that he had gathered, tied with bits of bramble and branch from their walk. The boy's eyes caught upon them and he drew breath like a fish from the water. He tried to move. Too late. Aodh bound the false rope about the boy's neck before he could get away, and drew it tight like a noose. The boy scratched and pulled at it, but his skin hissed and burned.
You wretch! You fool! Blech!
The boy spat again. He fell into the snow and tried to flee, but the leash drew him back.
How could you know? No, you were not invited. No!
You are not getting away.
He pulled the tether and the knots tightened. The boy was drawn to his feet.
Keep moving.
You have been here before. To the Under.
His mouth pulled like the rictus of a scowl. He started to walk, his shoulders hunched, his head turned back to watch.
I should have known. The king invites no one. You have come before, but why?
The Under is where all foul things live, where the sun dies at night. Why would anyone come here?
To take something!
He kicked the boy so that he fell forward against his tether and retched. He moved more quickly.
You have nothing that I want.
Someone taught you. Someone told you.
The words became a stretched out howl as he touched his tether again. He shook his head and his hair cast a white shadow across his face.
You could not know these magics!
It was not a guess at the riddle, and he had no need to answer. Aodh walked in silence and the boy continued to babble, words tripping over his lips like spittle.
I don't understand.
The tether drove him mad, but it did not stop his legs from moving. Aodh watched the mountains swell from the ground ahead of them, like black clouds on the horizon. They walked through the night, if there could be such a thing in the Under, beneath the call of the harpies. The birds swooped low and pecked with their beaks of bone. Aodh fought them with his free hand, cracking their skulls on the rocks, or tearing at their wings. Blood meant little. Pain meant nothing. They kept moving.
We come upon the sea now.
A clear spot in his madness.
What will you do when the sirens call for you?
He laughed and it tittered off, echoing against the growing mountains.
Your ears will bleed, your mind will turn to pudding, and then I will drink it. I will drink it and learn your secrets.
The black cliffs overlooked the sea. The moss was a small comfort for his feet. His heart thrummed in his chest, and the sirens began to sing. Most sat out upon the rocks, jutting from the sea. Those discontent few, unwilling to watch their prey from afar, scaled the cliff. Their voices were like slow-poured honey, their lips as fine as roses. He watched and tried to see them for what they were, the broken fingers, the nails torn from scaling the rocks. He tried to see the blood that ran down their elbows, that dripped and hissed. He did not have to try hard. His stomach lurched and squeezed, but he did not want them. He did not need them. Had he grown so old to not feel the stirrings of a woman? No, he thought. It was only that he could truly see them at last. The boy fell and he cried out. He tried to go to the sirens, but Aodh stopped him. He pulled at his ears, his ears, his ears. They turned red and raw, and Aodh was forced to drag him by the tether. The boy's shoulder cracked upon the ground. The stones cut him, but he did not care.
Why?
The boy cried, and Aodh did not listen. Why? The sirens sang, and Aodh did not hear. They sat before a bridge, far from the songs. Aodh tied the rope about his wrist and picked the thorns and rocks from his cuts. Ahead he could see the mountain path, his destination, and his heart beat with the stirring of the wind. He was not as strong as he had once been, but his muscles were still tight. He was weather-beaten, cold and old and alone, but he was more man than these foul beasts. He would take his daughter back.
The king once had a daughter.
His thin arms were coiled about his legs, and so he held himself tightly.
Her hair as black as raven's wing, her lips as dark as plum, as beautiful as a star.
He sucked on his lower lip, his eyes far away, perhaps on the worm he had left.
So beautiful that a siren would have no hold over her suitor. So sweet, a father would think to take her for his own wife. So fair, a mortal man who thought himself a hero would steal her as a bride.
You do not need to tell me about her beauty.
No, I would not. I should not.
From where Aodh sat, he could see the river beneath the bridge. It was a long fall, and he knew what slept beneath.
Because you are the one who took her. You are the one. You tried to fool me with your beard, and you are old now. But you are him. You are that man!
Aodh wrenched him up from the ground, from the snow. The boy bit and scratched, but Aodh did not care.
Tell me, was it you who cast the bones into the fire? Who saw my daughter beyond the door? Did you think the king would forgive you if you only told him where to find me?
She is not your daughter! The father planted the seed! You came to steal a fair girl, but what did you expect in the under? What did you think she was?
She was more fair than you had any right to know.
The words were thin and brittle between his clenched jaw. He dragged the boy through dirt and snow and to the bridge. The boy had to know. He had to have told the king. There was so much anger. Aodh had not known he could still feel so angry. It made him feel young again. The boy's eyes grew wide and his nails began to scratch anew.
No!
Aodh did not hear. He did not listen. He held him over the parapet of the bridge, clasping hands. He watched the boy's body twist like a leaf in the wind. Aodh's mind told him to stop. The boy meant nothing, was nothing, did not need to die. His heart would not let him listen.
You do not need to do this!
All who would die say that.
I will not tell the king. I did not tell the king. I will not warn him that you came. I'm not his guard. Not anymore. Not after you. You can leave still.
He knows. He left the key. He knew I could not stay away. He waits to kill me now, to take his crown back.
Aodh leaned in across the parapet until he could smell the blood on the boy's mouth.
You should not have told him where I was.
I didn't.
It didn't matter. He let go and the boy fell like a stone.
No!
His body did not hit the water before a wriggling, twisting shape broke the surface and caught him. As he crossed the bridge, he could still hear the thin voice crying, a strangled plea Aodh could not hear. Bile rose at the back of his throat, and his stomach churned. The mountain wind was foul and dead. The sound of his daughter crying echoed down the pass and made him run on battered feet. He was not too late, could not be too late. He remembered their home when he had returned, one of her shoes cast off beside the bed, and both her mittens left behind. He held them and cried until the wool was soaked and his eyes burned. Harpies sat around the crown of the mountain where his daughter lay in chains. Blood dribbled from a split lip, her skin so pale it was hard to remember the color once in her cheeks. When she saw him, tears leapt into her eyes and she tried, but could not stand. Aodh went to her and fell upon his knees. He took her in his arms and felt how light she had become, that even her bones seemed to weigh nothing. He whispered and crooned and ran his old, bent fingers through her hair. The shadows screamed in release as they split from the mountaintop, becoming wings and feathers and dark, deep eyes. Eyes with the souls of 100 dead kings. The Watchers flew dizzily apart, unfolding their wings from the slack, naked body of the king. His body was old and scarred, more puckered flesh and pus dripping sores than pale skin. In his hand he held a dagger, and in his gaze he held Aodh. When he smiled, the moon caught his eyes, one as blue as the sea, and the other as red as fire.
Grandfather.
The king hooked his finger beneath the beak of a Watcher.
Blood will return to blood. It will be done soon.
You did not have to do this. I do not want the crown.
He took it from his head, nested in the curls of his hair and invisible to all. He alone could see it, cold and black.
And I do not want you. You were not made to rule. You were not made for this place. What better than my own blood to take this throne after me?
The king knelt and stroked her cheek with the flat of his blade. The Watchers cried out, but their warning was too late. Aodh fell upon the king with a madness in his eyes and a hunger in his belly. It wanted vengeance, anger, blood. They crashed into the snowdrifts, careening, rolling through the snow and rock of the mountaintop. A cold like lightning pierced Aodh's belly. Blood ran down the old king's hand. Aodh howled, but the pain meant little. Nothing less.
My daughter will not live this way.
He felt the blood running down his body, covering him hip to knee. It was the first warmth he had felt in what seemed like years.
She won't be trapped like a mother, stuck here with you and these people.
What right do you have over my daughter?
The Watchers covered them, their black wings like the shadows of night.
She is mine as sure as she breathes. No one should be forced to live in this hell.
He heard his daughter crying for him, and it turned his blood to fire. Aodh found a stone half buried beneath the snow and wrenched it free.
Someone must.
I will take her place.
He brought the stone down on the king's skull. Bone cracked. He rose and straddled the broken king. Aodh beat the king's head until his eyes were unseeing, until his chest stopped beating, and he had no face to speak of. The Watchers shrieked and the mountains shuddered. His daughter ran and fell against him, tears freezing on her cheeks. Her lips were chapped and blue. They fumbled over words.
Father!
He ran his shaking hand through her black hair.
You cannot stay here.
His wound was numb, frozen, but he was old and had dealt with worse. He tilted her head back, saw her eyes both blue and red.
Your mother would not want you to stay. I do not want you to stay. This place is cursed. It's not for a girl like you. The Hag's Gate is going to close. You need to leave before it's gone forever.
I can't leave you in this place.
Her face was warm against his chest. Somehow, impossible, was his mind already turning, becoming something different. He looked at the broken body of the king, watched as a new watcher flew among the rest. A pulled the blade from his stomach and sat back, watching the sky grow dark.
Go, now.
The watchers cried, the harpies flew. He did not see when they drove his daughter away, but he heard her crying. He heard her crying all the way to the Hag's Gate, as he sat staring at the crown, and knowing.
She will have to take your place one day.
The watcher landed on the stone, folding his black wings against his body. It blinked, its eyes both blue and red and seeing.
There must always be a king or queen in the under. She will not escape forever.
But she will escape for today.
The blade fell into the snow, red and bent. He ran his fingertips along the crown, black and cold. He was an old man, but not yet so old he could not give his daughter what years he had left. A put the crown upon his head.